Hi there, and welcome to another video. Before this starts, real quick, I just wanted to put this up, which allows you to click on these three links for either my Patreon, my Facebook, or my Twitter. For those of you who don't necessarily make it all the way through the videos, I know they're super long. Patreon is there for if you want to go check that out and support me with various projects that I'm doing, and there are little incentives for different levels of payment. And Facebook and Twitter are just social media to make it able to get in contact with me and see what's coming up in the future. Alright, thanks so much for your support. Enjoy the video. Bye. Welcome everyone to a new series focusing on the Total War Warhammer campaign map. We'll be going across the map in segments, learning the various places, geography, and noteworthy things about each region. We'll also attempt to learn all that we can about entire continents and explore the Warhammer world to the fullest. Our first video will focus on Norsca, the icy realm that is home to the many marauder tribes and terrible beasts that often make up the Warriors of Chaos armies. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Geographically, Norsca is a mountainous region, almost permanently covered in snow and ice. Immense glaciers dominate the northern shores that have been the scene of many great battles, and the forests south of the mountains are infested with flesh-hungry beastmen or worse. The entire region is a frozen wasteland, utterly incapable of producing all but the most meager of crops due to the iron-hard soil and howling winds of frost. The various small islands and fords surrounding Norsca tend to be shrouded in mist, which allows the Northmen to hide their longships until the time comes once more to terrorize the southern shores. If one can penetrate inland past the frozen steeps, they'll find the open plains, where tribes of horsemen dominate the land. Despite all of these things, Norsca is actually quite resplendent in natural resources, should one be able to survive long enough to claim them. Extensive forests with rare breeds of wood, large amounts of gold, silver, and other precious metals buried within the mountains, and copious amounts of warpstone, which is a precious material to any who study the arcane. When it comes to climate, the danger of Norsca just goes up another notch. They spend almost half of the year in near total darkness due to pretty much permanent cloud cover. It's almost always below freezing due to the virtually never-ending blizzards, and it's added to by the chill spray sent from the Sea of Chaos to the north. However, there are a few months every year during the summer season where things warm up enough to maintain the plains in the center of Norsca and the creatures that reside there, giving the Norse access to enough food to get by, though they still rely primarily on raiding to survive. However, the greatest danger of Norsca is not the land nor the weather, but the other things that inhabit dark caves and ancient forests. Here can be found cockatrices, manticores, and other foul things. One of the most infamous beasts to roam the mountains of Norsca is that of the ice drakes, primordial dragons capable of unleashing entire blizzards with a breath, who care not what they catch to eat so long as it has flesh. Trolls and chaos spawns roam the forests, while unmentionable and unknowable things stalk the mountain passes and lurk in the cursed depths of the chaos-tainted oceans. In Norsca, you are never safe, and something foul always lurks nearby. It should be no wonder that the people who thrive here are one of the most dangerous races of men in the world. Now, let's go ahead and talk about the actual inhabitants of Norsca. The Norskans as a cohesive people do not actually exist. In truth, the word Norscan means men of the north, and is the term given to the various tribes by the Old Worlders looking for a collective term. The Norse are quite distinct, however. They're pale, strong in frame, and tall. They tend to be fair-haired, often blonde or red in color. All keep their hair long, often in braids with various talismans woven in. Their facial hair also tends to be almost completely unshaven, and they grow quite a bit of it. As for clothing and armor, the Norskans tend to prefer fur and hide above all else. That is, until they become something more than human. To understand the Norscans properly, however, we need to go back to their past. We need to understand how they came to inhabit Norsca and what made up their people. The Norse are descended from the Norsci, an ancient people that held the land north of the Forest of Shadows in the Empire for many generations. They dominated these lands as a mostly nomadic people, living well enough off the land, though they relied far more on hunting and gathering as their farming was crude at best. However, their dominion of the northern lands was ended by the coming of the Teutogons, who are the ancestors of the men who dwell now in Middenland. The war was extremely one-sided, and the Norsci were no match for the favored people of Ulrich. The ancestors of the Empire were brutal folk, masters of warfare, and forced the Norsci, as well as the Udoses and the Ungolls, far up to the northeast, closer to the modern-day border of the Empire in Kislev. The Norsci resettled there, but things were tense as the great religious and cultural differences between the tribes from the south and north were extremely big. When Sigmar later rose to preeminence among the 12 tribes of the modern-day empire, not all men were eager to join his banner. The Norsci were one such race, and due to their unwillingness to submit, they were forced even further north into the lands now belonging to the Ungolls, the ancestors of Kislev. Much like the folk of Sigmar, the Ungolls did not look kindly upon these refugees, and forced them further north still. The land they finally ended up in was what is now called Norsca, though at the time it was infested with horrific mutants and roving bands of Kurgan from the western Chaos Wastes. The Norsci refused to back down, however, and the race that survived the purge of Norsca, whether through killing all opposition or interbreeding with the others like the Kurgan through raids, the people that emerged were those that we now call the Norse. Now that we understand their historical roots a little better, let's go ahead and talk about their modern culture. Norsca is not a unified nation like the Empire or Bretonnia. It is much more like the Border Princes, being a bunch of warring tribes and settlements that live on the same stretch of land. On this particular stretch, there are 7 main tribes that are dominant, but we'll talk about them in just a minute. The structure of each tribe is pretty simple. There are dozens, if not more, smaller communities that combine to make up generally 1 to 3 family clans. These family clans then swear fealty to that tribe's king. Now, the tribes of Norsca are generally divided into 2 categories, being the northern tribes and the southern tribes. See, Norsca resides within the Shadowlands of Chaos, far too close to the Umbra Chaotica, also known as the Chaos Wastes. This has some important effects on the culture of the northern Norscans. For instance, mutations are extremely common, and it's quite frankly rare to find a human there without some form of stigmata. These tribes are also extremely vicious, and often mix blood and culture with the warlike Kurgan tribes from the Chaos Wastes. They are the most bloodthirsty of the Norse, and make up the tribes of the Greylings, Vargs, and the infamous Islings. Next are the southern tribes of Norsca. Although these tribes are just as eager for blood when the tides of chaos come sweeping out of the north, majority of the time they're a far more peaceful lot. These Norse prefer to trade and travel the world, thus are seen as more civilized by southern nations. That being said, don't be fooled as they're just as dangerous and fond of fighting as their northern kin. The tribes in this region are the Bjornlings, the Scalings, Sarls, and the Bersenlings. Now that we've talked a little bit about each of the tribes, let's go ahead and get into more specifics, looking at the class system that organizes Norse society. Like many societies in the Warhammer world, the tribes of the Norse work on a hierarchical system that is mostly patriarchal in nature, which functions well for their typically nomadic and warlike nature. The bottom rung of the ladder is made up of thalls. These indentured servants live miserable lives in the cold north, often ending up building longships, toiling in the frozen fields, or the womenfolk ending up as the newest wife to their captor. However, those are the lucky ones. Most thralls end up being murdered in various and horrible ways, whether being disemboweled before a voyage to appease the demons of the sea, having their blood spilled by seers to conjure magic, or the particularly nasty practice for christening a dragon ship, which involves laying down a large line of thralls from the shore to the ocean and crushing them all to bloody pulp beneath the ship as it's dragged over their screaming bodies. Next are your peasants that are actually Norse, but they're too weak to do much in the way of fighting. They function as the builders, craftsmen, and farmers of the various tribes. Though viewed as inferior and given no prestige, the Norse at least realize that without this rung of society, they'd all probably perish. The most common role for the Norse, however, would be that of the warrior. These are the hunters, the raiders, and the heroes of the North. Although becoming a fighter seems like a fairly simple thing, there are important rites of passage that each tribe does differently. Some require feats of courage or strength, others require the slaying of a mighty beast, or stranger still are the tribes that use thralls to populate a fake village to see how the youngest would-be raiders perform, sending them in to kill and loot this fake town. After this, warriors make oaths of loyalty to their family's Jarl, binding them to protect the noble, boosting his prestige in return for gold, slaves, and other things of value. Warriors gain prestige through acts that aid their tribe, such as securing meat by slaying great beasts, or returning from a successful raid with various loot. That being said, there is still a strong sense of camaraderie among Norse warriors as they grow together under their Jarl. This also leads to each Jarl having effects on how his warriors appear, whether influencing what weapons they take into battle, a particular fighting style, or even how they wear their armor or hair. The next tier in Norse society is that of the Seers and the Vitki. These are the advisors to the Jarls, providing consultation to find the will of the gods or the tribe's ancestors. These men and women are wizards, perceiving the winds of magic that allows them to consult demons and the spirits of those who've passed on. Vitki are similar to Seers, except the Vitki are specialized in the magic of the ruinous powers, so basically they're chaos sorcerers. Many of these individuals are actually from the lands south of Norsca, magically adept cultists who have fled the civilized lands to be hailed as prophets and valued members among the Norse. The next rung belongs to that of the Jarls. These are mighty warriors that serve the king of the tribe, functioning as the absolute ruler of their lands unless the king is somehow involved in the situation. However, when the call to war sounds, all Jarls are expected to immediately rally to their king. Should the king and queen of a tribe die without an heir, the Jarls will immediately turn on one another in bloody conflict to claim the empty throne. Despite the former description suggesting a somewhat decent loyalty, should a king show signs of weakness, it is expected for a Jarl of great strength to slay his master and usurp the throne, for the Norse refuse to be led by the weak. And finally is the rank of king. There is one king in each of the 7 tribes, and he is without a doubt the most powerful of his people. Each one of these men are chaos champions, often of some renown, bearing marks of chaos and other favorable signs from the gods. Though each clan has a king and takes great pride in their independence, occasionally rare individuals rise up to become High King, a Norse who dominates all 7 tribes. When it comes to settlements, the Norse rely mostly on wooden longhouses that are carefully constructed to blend well with the surrounding area, providing that layer of defense. Each village also tends to feature a holy site that functions as an altar and the residing place of the local Seers and Vitki. These altars tend to be heavily magically charged, seething with the raw power of chaos due to runes and sacrifices made there regularly. Finally are the fortresses of Norsca. Although not nearly as grand or impregnable as the castles of the south, these strongholds are still powerful defensive positions, often carved from the mountains themselves. When looking at the industry of Norsca, there's not a whole bunch going on. However, this isn't for lack of natural resources. The Norse have a steady access to ivory, iron, fine woods, and veins of precious metals. Even then, in the plains of central Norsca, there can be found exceptionally fertile soil, though this is quite rare in the frozen climate. They tend to outsource most of their metals and armor and weapons to races like the Chaos Dwarves, or making pacts with foul demons. So due to that, their industry doesn't seem to have developed much over the recent centuries or so, though they are quite adept at doing things with iron. When it comes to things like religion and spirituality, the Norse tend to get a tad bit complicated. For while the Norse do worship the gods of chaos, there's actually a lot more to them than that culturally. Firstly, Norse believe the physical world is a lie, a created falsehood designed to test them. The truth is the spirit world, which can only be perceived by their mages and seers. This belief in the physical world being false has led to the Norse caring little for if they die. If they can die in this world, showing their worth to the chaos gods and their ancestors, then it's a worthy decision. To them, death is an escape to the true world, should they prove themselves as mighty champions. Due to their proximity to the Chaos Wastes and the actual realm of chaos itself, this line of thought isn't actually as crazy as it sounds. See, due to being a part of the Shadowlands, the geography in and around Norsca changes from time to time. Mountains randomly appear or leave in a day's notice, storms burst from nowhere and recede just as quickly, and snakes suddenly sprout feathers and turn into birds in the blink of an eye. It's not hard to imagine why the Norse have come to believe that the realm of chaos, the realm of demons, is in fact reality, and the physical world is but a brief challenge in the face of eternity. It should also be noted that although they believe in and worship the Chaos Gods, the list of actual deities that each tribe worships tends to be in the hundreds, including many of their fallen heroes, demons the tribe has encountered, their ancestors, different aspects of the actual Chaos Gods, or terrifying figures of immense power like Kolek Suneater. This is also why war matters more than anything to them. To join the gods, to escape the waking nightmare, to fight alongside their ancestors once more, the Norse believe one must become a champion of war. To prove themselves to the gods, they throw themselves into battle with fervor and joy, for what could possibly be better than to prove oneself to the gods and move on to something greater than this life? With their religious views kind of out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to something a little bit more mundane. The currency system of Norsca is pretty straightforward. They rely mostly on the ancient ways of bartering, though in recent decades they did begin minting their own currency, which are small silver coins called skeatas, to trade with the southern nations, though it's likely that only the southern tribes actually have this. As for their language, the Norse tongue is a weird hybrid abomination that draws most of its roots from Kazalid, which is the dwarf tongue, but has been obviously influenced by ancient Old Reichspiel and the Dark Tongue. Though, to make matters worse, all of the tribes tend to use different words to mean the same thing. For instance, the southern tribes tend to call bears a pair of words meaning roughly beewolf, because they are very wolf-like in aspect and have wolf-like qualities of being ferocious and fierce, but they are often seen eating honey, so beewolf, while the northern tribes, where bees do not exist, tend to call them water wolves, because they often see the bears hunting for salmon in the streams, therefore water wolves. Lastly are the rather strange and sometimes just repulsive customs of the Norse. These range from slaughtering a thrall before battle to attract the attention of the gods, to fathers consuming the fluids and flesh of their child's afterbirth to consume the essence of change believed to be in such substances, which supposedly will empower them. This also includes the infamous system of Weregild, which isn't all that different from the grudge system of the dwarves. When wronged in some fashion, the Weregild, or debt, is often taken to the clan's Jarl to come up with a solution to the situation by determining the appropriate payment to the responsible party. This system is far from fair as it depends upon the Jarl's mood and how tired he is and how well he knows both members of the complaint, but alas, the North seem to abide by it well enough. This concept of Weregild is actually what led the Chaos Lord Mortkin down to raise Volganov to the ground in payment for the Elector Count of Oslin destroying the Chaos Champion's own home. Alrighty, with that absolutely horrendous amount of information out of the way, let's focus on the important features notated on the map of this country, or continent, or whatever it would technically be qualified as. Firstly, I should note that each of the major regions are divided up according to one of the 7 major tribes that owns them. So let's begin, and we'll focus on the tribe that owns them and then important sites that reside within each region. The way we'll do this is first we're going to cover the northern tribes going from left to right, and then we'll do the southern tribes going from left to right. So first, the Hellspire Mountains region is dominated by the Greylings tribe. And beyond the name of the tribe that owns this area, we actually don't have much information on what's within it. The numerous maps of Norsca that I own do not go this far west when they're showing Norsca. So that's about all we know, is that this is where the Greylings hang out. So let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Next, we have the Mountains of Naglfari. This area is dominated by the Vargs, another one of the bloodthirsty northern tribes. You'll notice that for this region, I actually have 3 areas color-coded in different colored circles, and I'm going to tell you what resides in each of these areas. The blue area marks the approximate location of the Doom Keep. The Doom Keep is an extremely large fortress for a very skilled army of the Warriors of Chaos. I would speculate that these Warriors of Chaos are likely undivided, but if you try to do any research on the Doom Legion, you end up getting the guys who serve under Krell. So perhaps they're actually related to the previous champion of Khorne when he resided up here in life. They might be related. So in that case, the Doomkeep may actually be a Khornite bastion, if anyone actually still resides there. Next, on the yellow location, we have the Monolith of Katam. Monoliths are large structures of various types of materials that are made either by demons, the gods themselves, or Norskins to honor or tribute a very famous warrior of the gods, usually because he's ascended into demonhood or has achieved some monumental task. Katam was one of the most adept demonologists in the Warhammer world, who had this monolith built in honor of his death. His skull is actually still an extremely powerful artifact, for after his death it was daubed with runes using the blood of the Chaos Dragon Bodros. It has the ability to reveal immensely powerful arcane secrets to wizards, but also has a tendency to utter things that will drive those who listen completely insane. Egrim von Horseman used this skull during his rise to power in the College of Light, leading up to when he unleashed the Chaos Dragon sealed beneath it and fell to Tzeentch, giving Tzeentch his soul. The skull's current location is technically unknown, depending on which version of the lore you look at. In some versions, the skull is still in the hands of Egrim von Horseman. In others, it has left his possession and is now up for grabs for the potentially lucky or unlucky sorcerer who finds it. And finally, the green area is the site of a famous battle known as the Wrath of Galroch. This likely refers to the battle site where he was awoken, that's recorded in the lore. Galroch, if you do not know, is a giant chaos dragon with 2 heads who is a terrifyingly adept sorcerer of Tzeentch. He is the first of the chaos dragons, and he is a special character in the Warriors of Chaos list, and I hope to see him playable one day. but this site is likely where the Norskins and the Greenskins met in a furious battle that awoke him, and when he woke up, he flew out and ended up killing everybody. Greenskins actually sent up 6 wyverns to fight him, and he killed all of them by himself. So that may give you a small idea of just how powerful Galrach is. And that pretty much covers the mountains of Naglfari, so let's go ahead and keep on keeping on. Next is the region called the Mountains of Hell. This is where the Islings reside, and they are considered the most dangerous of all the Norscan tribes and are the last of the northern tribes. As you see, we've got some more minor regions, so I'll go ahead and tell you what those are. In the blue space is the approximate area of a notated lair of cockatrice. Whether this is where one of them resides or a bunch of them resides isn't exactly clear, but we know that it's at least noteworthy to show up on their map as a noted location where to find those beasts, which are, of course, exceptionally dangerous. And the green area, approximately in that mountainous region, lies the Forbidden Citadel. This is likely either a Tzeentch or Slaaneshi fortress. It's not exactly clear, and we don't have much lore exploring into exactly who owns the Citadel or what resides within. Finally, the yellow area shows a monolith along the northern shore, which is known as the Monolith of Flesh, which is most likely a Slaanesh champion's monolith who ascended to become a demon prince. That may not exactly be the case, but that would be the best bet in my opinion. Let's go ahead and head on to the next zone. So we're heading to the south and to the left. Next up is the Giant Home Oblast, which is where the Bearsenlings reside. This is actually the busiest of these zones, as you can see from all the different colors. So let's go ahead and get into it. Around the approximate area of the yellow circle is the place known as Setra's Revenge. This was an event in which the Norse went down to invade Nehekara, and they got too close to Khemri, and Setra himself ended up coming out to fight them. But during the fight, a Chaos Lord managed to kill Setra, and although he was killed immediately in retaliation by Setra, the Tomb King's body basically teleported back to his pyramid to begin regenerating, and the Norse took his crown and fled back to Norsca. Well, Setra, when he finally finished regenerating and came back out of his pyramid, was incensed beyond description, gathered up a massively huge army, and went all the way up, all the way around, all across the frozen sea, and invaded right around there and just absolutely destroyed everybody he could find, until he ended up claiming every single gold coin that had been taken from him and his crown. The yellow area indicates the most famous battle, where Setra finally ended up getting back his throne at the end of it. But I will go into the details of that battle when we do the Setra the Imperishable special character video, which will be at a later date. In the green and blue circles, which you'll notice are a little bit interconnected, lies the fate of Krakadrak, which is the last hold of the Norscan dwarves. The blue area is actually noted as a battle for a pass, and this is where the Norscan dwarves actually went up against the Chaos Lord Valmir Iceling, who is from the Icelings tribe. It was a terrifying Chaos Lord. He actually went by the title of the Chaos Emperor until his death at the hands of the dwarves. His invasion was exceptionally skilled, and he was a terrifying warrior and great general, and through trickery he pretty much ended up defeating the dwarves. But King Silverbeard, the last Norscan dwarf king, decided to not go out without a fight, and so had his runic cannons explode or destroy the pass itself, causing an avalanche of stone and snow, which crushed all of the Norscan dwarves and Valmir Iceling and a lot of his horde underneath it, killing them all instantly. That being said, most of Valmir's elite chosen had already gotten into Krakadrak, and so they ended up purging the hold in 2390 of the Imperial calendar. And so, unfortunately, for those of us who would have loved to play Norscan dwarves, they no longer exist as they were killed by chaos. In the purple area, which is a little hard to see, it's at the very bottom of the Giant Home Oblast. Roughly in that ballpark lies the Manticore Lair, which is exactly what it sounds like, a place where one or more manticores dwell, which if there's more than one, then goodness help whoever tries to go up there. The orange area is the monolith of Throthrax, which he was an extremely powerful chaos sorcerer lord of Tzeentch who ascended to demonhood, but many of his horde and a lot of his sorcerers apprentices decided to keep residing around his monolith. But one day, a beastman herd came and claimed his monolith as their herdstone and began performing rituals around it, really befouling it. And the servants of Throthrax got really, really angry and came out and had a big battle against them. And his sorcerer apprentices, who are now powerful sorcerers of Tzeentch in their own right, enacted a ritual that ended up devolving the beastmen even further than they already are, turning them into basic cattle and sheep that had like human faces, and then they were all slaughtered by the Tzeentch horde, which then cleaned out the monolith and then etched that victory into the monolith as the final win of Throthrax himself. Another thing worth noting is that just south of this region, into the northern Oblast, well, not quite the northern Oblast, that little area to the east of the northern Oblast, that is roughly where Hell Pit is, which Hell Pit is a terrifying Skaven city. It's the headquarters of Clan Moulder, which is the Skaven clan responsible for mutating gigantic beasts and rat ogres and hell pit abominations, and making all of the monstrous creatures that the Skaven employ in their armies. But let's go ahead and move on to the next zone, because today we're only focusing on Norsca. Next up is the region notated as the Vanaheim Mountains. The tribe that dominates this area is known as the Bjornglings. And there are two things in that green area. Closer to the western side and purely on the shore is a battlefield notated as the Ford War. This was likely one of the retaliatory invasions by the Empire into Norsca to cut down all of the Northmen and try and prevent further chaos raids, which is something that Karl Franz has done a bunch during his reign. So this could be the site of one of the many battles where Karl Franz showed up and absolutely devastated the Northmen, because he does that a lot during his time on the throne to try and keep the forces of chaos in check. Ultimately, it doesn't work, but it does delay a number of invasions by quite a few years, so it wasn't a complete failure. More to the eastern side of it is the monolith of Borkill the Bloody-Handed. Borkill has a pretty fascinating story in that he was a chaos champion who was hunting a bone grinder giant, which, for those of you who do not know the difference between a bone grinder giant and a regular giant, a bone grinder giant is essentially to a giant what a giant is to us. So they are terrifyingly huge creatures. I mean, just absolutely massive. If a giant can step on us, those guys can use us comfortably as a toothpick. In any event, when he found the monolith that ended up being notated as his own, he discovered a strange chalice there. And this was actually the Chalice of Chaos, which is a strange magical item filled with demon blood that tends to bless the drinker with strength, and it often appears at the base of monoliths or at other significant places to chaos. When Borkill was drinking from this, the bone grinder giant attempted to ambush him, and in a feat of just terrifying ability, he single-handedly killed the bone grinder giant in combat, which almost instantly probably ascended him to demonhood. The Chalice of Chaos is a very potent item, and I hopefully assume it will show up in the game if you're playing Chaos, as it's a really fun item to use, though it does have a small chance of backfiring. But that pretty much does it for this area. It's just the monolith of Borko the Bloody-Handed and that one particular war. So let's go ahead and head east. Next up is the region notated as the Ice Tooth Mountains. This region is dominated by the Scalings tribe. Let's begin with the green and blue circles, which the green circle is the Bay of Blades on the eastern coast, which is actually not the site of a battle, but a location, which being that far to the north, that could be anything from a bay that's infamous for the warriors that reside there, to maybe a place where they dock their ships, to maybe even something more sinister than that. The blue circle actually notates the approximate position of the altar of the Crimson Harvest. This is an extremely powerful shrine to the Chaos Gods, though who it actually belongs to or what its technical function is not notated anywhere that I could find in the lore. That being said, it is a powerful altar to the Chaos Gods, meaning that it would not be unusual or even unexpected to find Chaos champions coming there to try and sanctify the shrine, either with sacrifices or some mighty feat, in order to attract the attention of the Dark Gods. And the yellow circle is the approximate area of the Hall of Snagger, which this may be referring to Snagger Halfnose, which I know I'm probably butchering the pronunciation of that, and I apologize. That being said, there's an E missing from Snagger's Halfnose's name, but assuming it's related to Snagger Halfnose, he was actually the son of High King Ormgard. And High King Ormgard was a very, very successful Norscan king who invaded Marienburg and managed to not only sack it, but conquer it. And he ended up dying roughly around that time due to some complication during the invasion, and his son ended up taking over and ruled over Marienburg as a king of sorts for a time. Eventually, though, he was chased out along with all of the other Norse when the Black Plague happened from the Skaven unleashing it on the Empire. It eventually made its way to Marienburg and ended up absolutely devastating the Norse, and they fled in terror back to the Ice Tooth Mountain region, and Snagger Halfnose might have built his hall there, his great place of residing, so to speak. And if that were true, then it would still remain. He did accomplish quite a bit in his life. Alright, let's go ahead and move on to the final area. And last, but certainly not least, is the region notated as the Trollheim Mountains, which is dominated by the Sarls tribe. The yellow area on this map marks the approximate location of the Golden Monolith. This is another one we don't seem to have a story for, being that it's golden, which is a very flashy kind of monolith to have. I would assume somewhat safely Slaanesh. It could be Tzeentch, but I would weigh much more heavily on the Slaanesh side of things. Might have been a champion of his that accomplished some mighty task, or ascended to demonhood, or maybe someone died there. The blue area indicates something that is called the Black Gulch, and although I searched and searched, I cannot find any reference to this thing called the Black Gulch. I would imagine it's some kind of pit or lake that perhaps has something very, very nasty living in it. Though that could be said probably for all of Norsca, couldn't it? And finally, the green area, which is quite exciting, is the lair of Throg the Troll King. If you do not know who Throg is, he is another special character of the Warriors of Chaos roster. He is the only intelligent troll in existence, and has actually carved out his own domain in that approximate area. He is the ruler of an entire army of trolls, and has a bunch of other massive, terrifying monsters that follow him into battle. So he's kind of like a Chaos Lord, but he would allow you to take an all-monster army. You wouldn't have any infantry or anything like that. So who knows? Maybe we'll get to deal with Throg in the game. He's a pretty famous figure in the Warriors of Chaos army, and is known for being politically shrewd, even for a troll. Well, especially for a troll, I should say. Um, and that pretty much wraps up the end of all the regions. So let's go ahead and wrap this video up then. Alright, that was a long one. Thanks so much to everyone for coming by the channel, especially if you make it this far. I know these videos are atrociously long, but I just want to get as much lore as I can, so you guys are just having the best experience and learning everything and anything you want to learn about Warhammer lore. I intend to do this with every single part of the campaign map. That being said, some of the locations like the Empire and parts of Bretonnia are much more in depth than others, like Kislev in the Badlands. I intend to go straight north to south, though it may not be a perfect north to south, just because some areas, like I've said, of provinces of the Empire will take a lot more time due to having a lot more smaller towns and lore behind them and stuff like that. There will be videos coming up in the future to be covering other topics, but I'll just send out little things about that. On my little banner here, feel free to visit my Facebook, my Twitter, or my Patreon. Patreon if you want to support the channel and help me out with various things like getting a better mic or whatever. And Facebook and Twitter so you can learn about what kind of videos are coming up in advance so you can get all excited or prepare for that or even ask questions. I'm more than happy to answer any questions you guys might have and all that stuff. So be sure to follow me on social media if that's something you're interested in. All right, with that pretty much does it. That wraps up the entirety of Norsca. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below if there's any questions you have about Norsca or where you'd like me to go next or just whatever, how your day's going. I'd love to know how your day's going. To show off if you actually make it all the way through this video, in the comment section below, do hashtag... let's do hashtag Norsci, which is Norsii, which is the ancestor tribe of the Norse. So if you make it all the way through, do a hashtag Norsci down in the description, and points for you, good sir, or down in the comment section, I should say. All right, thanks again for coming by. Appreciate all of your support. Thanks so much. Bye.